Dalzell.
Mr Speaker, it's always a pleasure to follow the honourable member, especially when we hear these stories about his youthful appearances in court. Obviously got off lightly.
What's that like?
It might have been a skill that he was well versed in at the time, but he hasn't quite managed to translate it to this environment. He's getting there. Look, of course Labor supports the Judicial Matters Bill. It was a bill that was introduced when we were in government, 25th of June 2008, and in fact I think that the member who actually moved it on behalf of the Attorney-General was in fact our Associate Minister of Justice at the time, the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove, an excellent member, and he did a very fine job of presenting on the bill and taking essentially the House through the particular provisions, because of course it's not an extensive bill. It covers three particular areas. It establishes the office of the Deputy Judicial Conduct Commissioner. It allows the Judicial Conduct Commissioner to decide to take no further action in respect of a complaint, and it increases the statutory maximum number of associate judges of the High Court from 6 to 9. Relatively straightforward piece of legislation. The Select Committee managed to report this back to the House on the 22nd of July, on the 18th of May last year. So the question that I really have for the next government, Speaker, is why has it taken them so long to deal with it, given that it's three relatively small adjustments to the legislation, the principal legislation, and then the question is that why on earth has it taken so long for it to come up on the order paper? And I think I know the answer. Because you know who the opposition spokesperson was at the time that this bill was introduced? Richard Worth, Dr. Richard Worth. He actually wasn't Dr. Richard Worth when he first became the opposition spokesperson on justice. He actually did his PhD while he was here in Parliament as a member of Parliament. Well, he had time on his hands, obviously. But I just want to make this point, because I think this is actually says a lot about the individual, is that instead of, and this is, you know how we should be playing the ball rather than the player. Well, after Clayton Cosgrove had given this very excellent speech on behalf of Michael Cullen, who was the then Attorney-General, he made this comment. He said that he thought that Clayton Cosgrove was very competent in his field, but certainly this is not his field. What an arrogant thing to say. I think it reflects a tragedy in the present Labor-led government that those who have been put in positions of responsibility in respect of judicial roles do not have any legal training or any sense of what is appropriate or what is not appropriate. What a funny thing for that gentleman to say. It is not a particular criticism of the member. He has been put into a position that is unenviable, but sadly it also applies to the Attorney-General. As others may well know, we have not had a situation in the history of New Zealand where an Attorney-General without legal qualification has occupied that particular responsibility for so long. Well, I just think that that's arrogant nonsense. But this was actually, I think, behind the government's, the current government's position on this particular bill. They actually thought that if they left it long enough, languishing on the order paper after it had come back from the Select Committee, we might forget what it was that the then opposition spokesperson on justice what he had to say. Because, of course, National opposed the bill. They actually National opposed the bill when it was introduced. And I think that Dr. Richard Worth had some interesting things to say about that. He said that essentially he felt that there wasn't sufficient evidence that the judges' productivity would be improved by this bill, and he said that the system didn't appear to be robust enough when a Judicial Conduct Commission can dismiss 72 complaints against judges without referring them to the bench. So I just think that sometimes one should be a little bit cautious about the positions one adopts in opposition, because it may well be that it's not the position that you would want to adopt in government. And I've actually tried to take the line pretty clearly on this side of the House as the opposition spokesperson on justice, is that when the government's doing something that we agree with, if it makes sense, then I'm going to say so, and I'm going to work with the government to achieve the end that we have in mind. If there's a mutuality, issues like domestic violence that we've been debating just now, we didn't oppose that bill, we support that bill. It is a part of a bill that in fact we introduced ourselves. I've worked with the Minister of Commerce, who is also the Minister of Justice, on issues when I was the Minister of Commerce and he was the opposition spokesperson, and there's been a little bit of that coming back the other way, but actually not as much as one would have hoped. And on the justice area, the drivers of crime stuff, again, disappointment on our side that the expression of desire to work with the government on a collaborative basis has been pretty much put on hold. And I think that that's unfortunate, and this is, I think, the problem that the government's had with this particular bill, is that an opposition spokesperson who had the arrogance to say that one of my very fine colleagues doesn't have any sense of what is appropriate or what is not appropriate, would actually be leading the government's position on this, when he was in opposition. So I just think sometimes I'm just sounding a little note of caution there to various members of the House. Mr. Speaker, I think that the proposals obviously within this bill are very sensible indeed. And of course the main reason why I think that they are sensible is that the work of the Judicial Conduct Commission is absolutely fundamental to confidence in our justice system. So, and with public confidence in the administration of justice comes the capacity for the justice system to respond to the needs of the community that it serves in a much more effective way. I think if people feel that there is no capacity to make a complaint about judicial conduct, then there are issues that are raised in the public arena that undermine confidence. And we've seen some examples of those over recent years. I think that the Conduct Commissioner is doing an excellent job, and I think to have a Deputy Judicial Conduct Commissioner is an obvious extension of that work and will enable that work to be undertaken more effectively and more efficiently. The fact that there are a number of complaints that actually are requiring of no further action is, I think, also a positive. I actually think that it's a positive, and so to have a provision written into the law to allow the Judicial Conduct Commissioner to decide to take no further action in respect of a complaint is a very sensible approach to take. And I think that again, the numbers speak for themselves in terms of the complaints that have been received and what is required to be actioned. Increasing the statutory maximum number of associate judges of the High Court from 6 to 9, I think, again, the establishment of the position of associate judge, I think they used to be called masters, did they? Masters of the High Court. And I was certainly very supportive of the change of title to associate judge, because I think that better reflected, probably reflected a better gender balance too than the word master might have reflected. But I also think that when we look at the ranks of our High Court judges who have been pulled from the ranks of the masters in the past, the word associate judge does suggest the pathway that wasn't there. And I think Sir John Hanson was the first master to be appointed, and then Jeff Venning after that. Justice Venning after that. And so with that a changing of the name to associate judge, I think it really does give an indication of progression. One of the reasons for having conflict of interest provisions written into the law was to enable the employment of part-time judges, and I think that's been a useful move as well. So I do commend the bill to the House.
Dr. Kennedy Graham.